This is the known Hunter x Hunter world. It contains a lot of very familiar looking continent things, because most of the Hunter x Hunter landmasses are just real world continents that have had a bit of a trip and a fall, which is very handy to give you a sense of scale. The Hunter x Hunter world is about as big as Earth, at least the human part, because the truth of Hunter x Hunter is that the entirety of the human realm exists within the center of a mind-bogglingly gigantic patch of water known as Lake Mobius. And beyond that lake is an inconceivably and unmeasurably large landmass that is collectively known as the Dark Continent. And whether it was planned or not, the Dark Continent is more or less the catalyst for every event that has ever happened in Hunter x Hunter, as reaching this location is the goal that Jing left Gon to accomplish. It's a destination full of treasures and discoveries that could elevate humanity to a new form of existence overnight, as well as calamities that could erase humanity's existence even more swiftly than overnight, probably more like by lunchtime. But the truth of the Hunter x Hunter world is that everything humanity has done is woefully insignificant to the concept of greater life on this planet. Humans are a teeny tiny ant colony that has only been allowed to exist as long as it has had a locational advantage. And in fact, humans are even lower on the pecking order than ants, because we've already experienced the Dark Continent's equivalent of ants, which came startlingly close to easily causing an apocalyptic scale event. And as a bit of a terrifying statistic, if you add up every known voyage to the Dark Continent, there is a combined survival rate of 0.04%. With everything we know about the Dark Continent, there is a resounding conclusion that this is not a place that we should dare step foot, because even their lowest form of life threaten the existence of the human race. So what hope does anyone have once we start encountering the secondary and even apex predators of this planet? Well, surprisingly, there is a little. Because there is a way to play the Dark Continent game, much like stepping into a much more bigger and more dangersome Greed Island. Greed Island was Togashi's love letter to card-based RPGs, and now you too can make love to letters as well with Overmortal, a captivating text-based adventure card RPG that takes you through the journey of transforming from a mere mortal to a not as mere immortal. And this month, 1 month after my wedding anniversary, Overmortal is celebrating its own anniversary, and it's doing so through a collaboration with Tales of Demons and Gods, an exclusive storyline where Nai Li and Yi Ze-yun step brazenly into the world of Overmortal to collect lost treasures and earned themed outfits. And mate, you'd better believe that there will be trials in Glory City through that dimensional gate, and seeing sites will earn you points to get unique rewards such as the Collab Curio Chrono Book, a Nightmare Urn, and you can unlock value packs to obtain the new powerful Divinity Master Bodhi, with daily login rewards including limited legendary curios, Fatum, and resources for days. Plus, you can also join in-world chat to receive bountiful Destiny chests. So you can and should download Overmortal through my link in the description or the QR code on screen, and by using my promo code DG002, you can get a ton of in-game rewards such as a treasure token, Fatum, and Nimbus Jade Slip, which you should 100% do because it's a fun game with engaging mechanics and such a clean, timeless art style. And by sponsoring this video, Overmortal are directly supporting our ability to bring you the best fictional hunter content possible as often as possible. So definitely check them out, but for now it's back to you, me. Several centuries ago, the most important book in the Hunter x Hunter world was published. It was called Journey to the New World, and it detailed the findings of a certain explorer who had traveled to the Dark Continent and apparently literally survived to tell the tale. And this book was met with very poor reception, terrible Amazon reviews. It was considered to be fiction, and not only that, but like real bad fiction. Journey to the New World was review bombed into obscurity, dismissed as the ramblings of a lunatic, and its invaluable information was lost to the world until a series of unexplainable events started to occur. Strange and horrific things started happening all across the human realm. Human remains found twisted into grotesque shapes, people withered and shrunk beyond all recognition, severed body parts regrowing themselves and clinging to life, decapitated bodies with unknown growths residing within them, as well as sightings of terrifying paranormal creatures that put the governments of all of the world's major nations on high alert. And all of this phenomena was detailed in Journey to the New World, which was then adopted as mandatory reading for those in high-level positions, now aware that the very fate of humanity lay within the writings of a lunatic. In reality, what the human realm was experiencing were the calamities of the Dark Continent. Creatures that had been unintentionally brought back from previous voyages, of which there have been many. But there are 5 calamities in particular that threaten to destroy humanity on a now daily basis. The first is the botanical weapon Brion, native to a labyrinth city located 400 kilometers north of Lake Mobius. It's a species that wiped out all but 2 members of an expedition led by the United States of Saherta, appearing as a human body with a botanical sphere attached to the head. What's horrifying about Brion is the unknown. We don't know if this visual is the entity, or if the entity has infected and fused with a human host. One clue we do have is what looks like a victim of Brion stored in the V5 facility. It looks as if the sphere was removed and the stomach ruptured to reveal an unknown substance within. All in all, it doesn't look to be too pleasant of a fate to endure. And ultimately, what we do know is that it was unstoppable and killed hundreds of elite explorers like that. The second calamity is the twin snake Hellbell, native to the swamplands directly south of Lake Mobius and encountered by the Federation of Ochima. Much to their misfortune, as Hellbell is capable of infecting its prey with pure homicidal desire, which wiped out 99% of their expedition party, leaving only 11 survivors. Of the 5 calamities, Hellbell is the only one that we don't have direct evidence of yet in the human realm. Hellbell is there, lurking somewhere, and its effects could very well be masked, because it's ultimately the prey of Hellbell that does all the killing. So any mad murder sprees could be a result of Hellbell. That or humans have just been lucky enough not to stumble upon Hellbell's new habitat yet. For a more enduring fate, the third calamity is named Pap, which was located in a mountain range slightly east of where Brion was encountered. And this is a calamity which human eyes have never actually seen, because the Pap remain lurking in the darkness. However, they administer pleasure to people and feed off their life force in exchange for that pleasure. So the Pap keeps you as food whilst making you think that this is a great deal for you. Not just food though, it is specifically mentioned that the Pap enjoy keeping humans as pets, which brings a whole new sinister layer to this arrangement, indicating that the Pap enjoy keeping their humans. However, they are eventually discarded, with previous victims of Pap having been found in the human world, indicating that the Pap are very active and are an ever-present threat to humanity. And it was the misfortune of the Burgerossa Union who encountered Pap on the Dark Continent, and on that expedition they had a survival rate of 0.7%, the lowest rate of any calamity. Because whilst other calamities naturally strike fear and horror into the you, Pap has this thing where it circumvents the human survival instinct. It makes you feel like everything's going well. In fact, better than well. Things have never been this good. I love this. And so the Pap convince you to forfeit your life for them. Our fourth thread is also a codependent calamity, this one being named I. And you should be very familiar with this one, because Narnica, the entity within Alakazoldik, is a confirmed I. They are referred to as the codependents of desire, a gaseous creature that inhabits a host and then grants desires at an equivalent, if not greater cost. And because we know about Narnica's power in such detail already, it's pretty easy to see how this threatens humanity as a whole, because big wishes cost big human lives. And in theory, if you were to make a big enough wish, that cost would eventually extend to every human in existence, which is what the Minbo Republic endured when they discovered the ice species. At first, this would have been phenomenal use for them, mate, a species that gives them whatever they ask for. This dark continent is pretty alright. But by the time they realized the cost, all but 3 members of their expedition had been killed. And we have very much the opposite problem with our 5th and final great calamity, Zobai, which is not a creature but a disease, one which the expedition team of the Kukanyu Kingdom were infected with, killing all but one of their infected survivors, who now lives in a state of morbid immortality. Zobai is known as the immortality disease, because if it doesn't kill you immediately, then you're going to suffer an even worse fate. It will never allow you to die. What it does is deteriorate the mind of an infected host to a very primal state, who continuously lives by eating their own flesh, which rapidly regenerates, and this goes on and on and on until, look, I don't know if it can ever end. Even if you put someone infected with this in a position that they weren't able to eat themselves, I imagine the disease would probably find another even more grotesque way to survive. Now, one thing I should note is that the expedition team that found Zobai featured Beyond Netro, the son of Chairman Isaac Netro, who returned apparently uninfected. Although this has led to a theory that Beyond Netro is the host of a Zobai disease, but has managed to retain his sanity and now lives as an immortal being among us. That's pure speculation at this stage though. However, the danger of these 5 threats cannot be understated. Other Dark Continent calamities have made their way to the human realm in the past, as it's speculated that all magical beasts take their origin from a Dark Continent creature, but as stated before, the Chimera ants were also from the Dark Continent, and they were classified with a threat level of B. Meanwhile, these 5 calamities are all a threat level of B plus to A, meaning that each and every one of them could end our species with even greater ease than the Ant King Meruem. And I'd like to put that into some even more terrifying perspective. Every calamity that we've encountered so far have been coastal calamities. Absolutely bottom of the pecking order stuff compared to what we see inland. Such as this enormous hand emerging ominously from the horizon line, or these 3 unbelievably colossal shadows, each one of them potentially twice the size of any given continent in the human realm. And then there's, whatever the crap this is, which looks like a huge floating head. And speaking of floating, one really cool thing identified on this map is the existence of sky islands that float within the Dark Continent in a manner best described as somehow, although I don't think the word island really does them justice, because each of these islands are the size of the entire human realm. So I guess they might be nice for a bit of safety, because at the very least, everything on the lower plane of the Dark Continent is capable of killing you in unimaginably horrific ways. So with that in mind, we should probably answer a very basic question, which is, why are we trying to get to the Dark Continent in the first place? It doesn't sound particularly pleasant, and every recorded human voyage has resulted in terrible things happening. To explain this, it's important to note that the Dark Continent itself is a reference to Africa. Dark Continent was a term used by Europeans, commonly believed that it was to reference how little they knew about Africa, this dark, mysterious, magical land. But magical in a dangerous way. Although in reality, Africa was one of history's greatest marketing endeavors, as the mysterious nature of the continent was mostly hyped up by merchants who were looking to sell their acquired African goods at a very high price. So merchants would sell the equivalent of tourist trinkets and claim that they had mystical African dark continental properties. But when it comes to the Dark Continent in Hunter x Hunter, all of that is actually true. The Dark Continent is capable of killing you, again in unimaginably horrific ways, but it's also capable of granting you equally good news, as each of the aforementioned 5 calamities were encountered on a mission to acquire a revolutionary substance, one of which was nitro rice, known as the ultimate secret to longevity, and in theory could keep you living as long as you desire, so long as you keep consuming it. Nitro rice is also speculated to be the reason as to how Isaac Netro lived well beyond 100 years, and in fact he may have been several centuries old. Another highly desirable substance is the unmanned rock, a mineral ore that would forever solve energy problems, as even the teeny tiniest pebble can generate up to 20 megawatts of power per day. There's also a herb that can cure all illness, as well as substances known as the Trinity Elixir and Metallion. Their benefits are admittedly vague, but they are said to form a new foundation of their respective fields. The greater point is that if you set foot on the Dark Continent and all you do is, pick up a handful of dirt, if there's no ants in that dirt, then you'll probably find something that will make you a billionaire, which is one reason why people keep trying and failing to send teams in. However, it's important to note that not every voyage to the Dark Continent ended in catastrophic failure. Previously, I brought up Isaac Netro, and he's a curious existence because he's actually been to the Dark Continent twice, and he went on at least one occasion with Linné Hors-d'oeuvre and Zig Zoldyck, with the reason being to find a strong opponent. In his words, he sought strength as an individual. He sought an opponent with either victory or death as an outcome. However, what Netro encountered could give him neither. There was no possible victory to be had on the Dark Continent, and no satisfying defeat to be had either. The only option available to him was to survive, and so he did twice, becoming one of the only known humans to have survived a Dark Continent voyage, as well as one of the lots that tried and failed to find what they were looking for. But something that's always struck me as odd is the question of why Netro made a second journey to the Dark Continent, given that he already knew that what he was looking for wasn't there. This journey is something that we know about, and my best guess is it was likely in an official capacity as a guide on behalf of another entity, and whether or not they succeeded is currently unknown. But what we do know is that eventually there were enough failed voyages that Isaac Netro lobbied to ban Dark Continent travel altogether, and also something to do with his son. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this was a ban that was successful and one that would not be lifted until after his death. An opportunity that has been readily seized upon by a total of 6 nations and the Hunter Association, who have pooled their resources for one big push to conquer the continent. And if I had to speculate, I'd say that it's probably not going to go very well. But this situation opens up the sheer logistical nightmare of a question that is, how do you even get to the Dark Continent in the first place? This journey is unimaginable to mankind because after passing through a barrier known as the Far Ocean Boundary, sea travel becomes impossible for human technology. Simply speaking, the waves are too big, the ocean predators are far too big, and the distance from the boundary to the actual content is so very far big it is too far to endure. And mankind has never successfully made a recorded trip to the Dark Continent on their own. If you look at series author Yoshihiro Togashi's map, you can see that there's a certain point where the waters become completely uncrossable, with waves and whirlpools the size of countries, but also a litany of sea beasts, including krakens, colossal whales, leviathans, umibozu, which are yokai from Japanese folklore, and most curiously, there's even a mermaid and or siren ready to lure sailors to a watery grave, much like everything else. To be clear, it's hard to know how much of this is literal. Sea monsters like this used to be marked on real-world maps as well, but it was less to say beware of the giant leviathan, and more to say that, look mate, you might want to hold off because these are uncharted waters. It was mainly to denote the unknown, and the Dark Continent has a whole lot of unknown. But what we do know about that unknown is that humans cannot physically sail there on their own. And so the way you actually get to the land is by negotiating with a clan of magical beasts known as the Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper singular, although it is a race. We don't call them the Gatekeepers for some reason. We have yet to see these beings appear, but they control the only known safe pathway to the Dark Continent. However, they don't exactly ferry people there through the goodness of their own magical beast hearts, and there is a great cost to using their services. In order to successfully navigate to the land, the Gatekeeper summons another entity known as the Guide, which I imagine is an end beast they create to accompany humans with a special set of restrictions and instructions. The Guide doesn't just ferry people to the Dark Continent, but I believe also remains with them through the duration of the journey. However, the biggest role the Guide actually plays is inevitably when the journey fails, because assumedly the Guide is the one responsible for returning the very few surviving humans, but it's also the responsibility of the Guide to then curse mankind with a Dark Continent calamity, a punishment thought up by the Gatekeeper to disincentivize Dark Continent travel, to serve as a warning for any other humans wishing to embark, or to simply rid the world of humanity for daring to cross this boundary one too many times. I mean, it is called the Gatekeeper. It could be their responsibility to keep the human realm in the center of Lake Mobius safe, some sort of ancient provision put into place, because that's something that often gets overlooked with the Dark Continent. It's highly likely that humanity originated from the Dark Continent, as there is at least one recorded built city, which is where Brion was found, a species that may very well have required a human host to survive. But furthermore, in the Karkian Empire announcement broadcast on iTube, Beyond Netro claims that the ancestors of humans originated on the Dark Continent. Although Beyond Netro is far from a reliable narrator, and his word should always be taken with great skepticism. However, the fact that the Dark Continent is a reference to Africa helps a lot with this point, because the ancestors of real-world humans first appeared in Africa and then spread across the globe. So the idea would be that thousands, potentially even tens or even hundreds of thousands of years ago, in order to keep their species safe, humans could have purposely set up shop in the center of Lake Mobius. Although there is at least one human still on the Dark Continent traveling as we speak. And that would be the author of Journey to the New World, Don Freaks, a man who is at least 300 years old and likely sustaining his existence with nitro rice as he continues his mission to walk all around the shoreline of Lake Mobius and log his findings, because his book at this point is only half complete. What was found centuries ago was Journey to the New World East Edition, cataloging half of Don Freaks' journey, and that's all we currently have because it's speculated that he's still writing the other half as we speak. However, in the meantime, we need to turn our attention back to Beyond Netro, because while his father may have sacrificed himself to protect the existence of humanity, Beyond Netro is currently threatening to sacrifice humanity to further his own incredibly bold and frankly terrifying desires.